Welcome. Welcome to the 25th annual Watershed Environmental Poetry Festival. Who would have thought that this would be virtual? It's amazing. I'm Joyce Jenkins, coming to you from Poetry Flash in Berkeley. And we have 5 virtual Watershed Poetry Festival events for you this weekend. This is the kickoff event. And in the chat box, you'll find a link to the Watershed page on poetryflash.org, where you can see the entire Watershed schedule and info about this year's Watershed poem broadside. It's an amazing poem by Ellery Akers, hand-printed broadside. It's sort of an art project we do every year to celebrate Watershed and to commemorate the gathering. So there's also links in the chat box about how to get the books that are being discussed and read from this evening. We have an online poetry festival virtual bookshop and other links here that you can explore. And both anthologies that we're going to be mentioning tonight are in the virtual bookshop. And thanks to Pegasus Bookstore in Berkeley for making that virtual bookshop, and the Ecology Center and Berkeley Farmers Market, and Poetry Flash for being presenters and sponsors, Berkeley Civic Arts, Alameda County Arts Commission, Poets and Writers Readings and Workshops, and the Watershed Keepers, our supporters. Tonight's reading is From Forest to Desert, Indigenous Ecopoetry of California, with your host, Kim Shuck. Kim Shuck is a San Francisco born and raised poet and visual artist who has brought people into the circle of poetry who have never been included before. She blazed a new trail while she served as San Francisco Poet Laureate 2017 to 2020 with the number and variety of events which she produced and read. She launched Fire Thieves, an intersectional and intergenerational poetry series, and Seeds, Creating Poetic Activism, a program to help poets grow poetry audiences in their own communities. And she did it all while publishing a beautiful collection of poetry. Her most recent book, Deer Trails from City Lights. It's just amazing that you did all that at once, Kim. She's a member of the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma. And besides Deer Trails, her books include Clouds Running In, Rabbit Stories, Smuggling Cherokee, and Sidewalk Indian. In 2019 to 2020, she was awarded an inaugural National Laureate Fellowship from the Academy of American Poets, a PEN Oakland Censorship Award, and the Northern California Book Reviewers Groundbreaker Award. Take it away, Kim.
Yay. Hi, everybody. It's good to see so many people here. Art Good Times asked a question. Yes, I was born in the city. I was born at UCSF. So we're here celebrating 2 books. One of them is California, Fire and Water, which was edited by Molly Fisk, who also received an inaugural National Laureate Fellowship. And with it, put together this project and did some other really cool things associated with it. California Fire and Water is the culmination of a project designed to help Californians face uncertainty and express their personal responses to the climate crisis. Funded by a Poets Laureate Fellowship from the Academy of American Poets, Molly Fisk sent poet teachers from California poets in the schools throughout the state to teach 5-session workshops on climate crisis. This anthology gathers work from these students as well as adult poets in hopes that it will prompt discussion and action on behalf of the planet, and for those of us suffering direct losses, provide solace. And it's an incredibly effective book. I'm going to read my poem from it, which is called Always Fire Season. Flame reads the stories of tree rings out loud and for the last time. Thursday, our kitchen fire alarms went off, breathing lives as we were, breathing the collected things of lives, the fur and claws, the feathers, the ID cards and photographs and pocket lint. Here in the Bay, our sunrises and sunsets have changed. Extreme wildfires, part of the new normal weather, and always fire season. We know the forests by when they burn. Whose ashes on our windshield, whose ashes in our skin, in our lungs. The cars, immobile, fused into the melted roadway. Less rain, cracked lips of hillside, flaking skin of floodplain, and the dice roll of pet sparks, conditionally captured in wire, running the dry west. Curled and silvered fingers of pine as monuments. It was funny for me to write about fire because I almost always write about water, but they are related here at the end of the continent. This is from Deer Trails. I also have a recent chapbook out from Mammoth Publications, which was brought out by Denise Low, who is also reading tonight. This is called The End of the Droughts. Panic is a luxury for those who are only in danger seasonally. Relax between battles. Some people don't want your smile or help, don't want you in the neighborhood they've chosen from a catalog. There's a heat that only comes from these sidewalks and nowhere else. I can only sleep with my head on the shoulder of a cousin these days. Perilous, I understand. You explain to me what is safe away from this kitchen table. The texture and quality of your words, and we weave. Weaving time is here. Sift, pull, edit, manage. Stand with me now in the ceremony of living by breathing water. The rain is coming. Relax between battles. There is a heat that only comes from these sidewalks. What is safe? Weaving time is here. Manage. The rain is coming. Wishing fog. Blank page of heavy fog, the drawing in of this weather, the curled cat of it, the tea steam, the soft sweater whispers, suggestions to the wishing fog, and then tumble softly into such a day. Early in my career, actually, people used to tell me about how I wrote too much about water, but the Aniumia, my father's people, pray at water every morning. So it's hardly surprising. This is called Arroyo Dolores. Ghost Arroyo filled in but digging, redigging, the sad creek. It never ran all year, and now it's so frail. We feed her water mouthful by mouthful. We feed her, our ravenous sister, under the full moon, the November moon that also fills the ghost water, glowing back, and guarded by bay laurel roots that have found her, and we feed her mouth and mouth of water, of light, of root. This was written about a different kind of storm, but It's not entirely unrelated. Please tell my family I'm alive. It's hard to know where we are with everything broken and scattered. War and weather will do that, and there's weather to come. We need to decide what we all understand and what is local. Survive like a single teacup. Always strange what's spared and what's taken. The chair has come apart, and there are roof pieces mixed in with spilled sugar, but that horrible quilt of your mother's is okay. Storm and sound has marked me, and I will never stop hearing it. Shocking, the idea. Safe as houses, and we did feel safe. We did pull our ideas around us like wooden walls, and we thought we knew. And I think this is going to be my last one for now. It's called The Stump of the Navigation Tree, which is a thing that has gripped my imagination for years. There used to be a way to get past an outcrop of rock, which at low tide would tear the bottoms out of boats in the bay. And they used to line themselves up on a tree in the East Bay Hills. They call it the navigation tree until the tree was cut down to make houses out of. Ritual morning orange red behind the cypress and rose tea. You and your skies, you are here with me. These 2 days of endless words, the careful words, the stump of the navigation tree invoked yesterday. Trees are vertical rivers as magicians, and I may need to go touch what is left, to ground that idea, to let the idea flow back, because it's far too much for this morning, and its shadows and blue that grow sharper by the second. Thank you so much. It is my overwhelming pleasure to introduce someone who is a very good friend, as well as all of the things I'm about to say, and quite an honorable publisher, I might add. Denise Low is the former Kansas Poet Laureate, is an award-winning author of 30 books of prose and poetry. She blogs, reviews, and co-publishes Mammoth Publications, which specializes in Indigenous American authors. Her new books are Jackalope and Shadowlight from Red Mountain Press, and The Turtle's Beating Heart, One Family Story of Lenape Survival from the University of Nebraska Press. Her poetry collection, Wings, will be released by Red Mountain Press in 2021. She has taught literature and creative writing at several universities, including Baker University, the University of Kansas, and Haskell Indian Nations University. Of mixed German, Scots, Lenape, English, French, and Cherokee heritage, she currently lives in Healdsburg, California. Please welcome the dear Denise Low.
And thank you so much. I really appreciate that, Wado, and you're my sister. Thank you to Molly Fisk for editing this wonderful anthology, and also Lucille Day and Joyce Jenkins. Thanks so much for organizing this and allowing me to be part of your circle tonight. This is the poem from that anthology, Wildfire Spread. A branching power line sparks the transfer station fire. It jolts backfeed boxes to Santa Rosa. They shut off the geysers above Dry Creek Valley. Here, fading chortle of generators. And gullies spider the slopes. Dried juniper leaves swirl, ready to fire flammable pines. Overhead, red helicopters loot, pouring water on grass tinder. Smoke billows in dust devil whorls. I moved out to northern Sonoma County, where one of my wayward sons has become a winemaker. It's kind of a mother's dream, actually. And ever since I've been here, there's been multiple catastrophes, including fires and I was looking through my poems and I can't keep straight all the different names of the fires. You know, I've got to keep organizing that. But this is called The Day the Sky Turned Orange. A Godzilla blast sunrise adds fuel to the horizon's full-throttled flames. Underfoot, buried fault lines quiver. We breathe shallow, smoky breaths. Recriminations are too late. Volcanoes lie dormant but might roar to life. Our mountain, a cinder cone, might explode one night while we sleep. Stranger things have happened. A forest disintegrates into floating flotsam around us, falling, and tomorrow ash will crumble into another screenshot of this monster show. Weather changes. The arrow of time flies one unbroken span. This moment of danger, Wallbridge Fire, 2020. Crows on pavement hop sideways, one-footed, like the powwow dance crow hop, but zigzag and half-light, feathers shine taffeta black. Smoke from burning redwoods blurs the street. Masked strangers walk by us, not threatening, but shielding from an invisible plague born on breath. Lungs quiver inside our chest, thudding a two-step song of murmurs. Tsuno Mountain sits wordless as haze circles its ridgeline of pines and live oaks. Morning sun barely remembers to return to this moon valley of vineyards and goats. Months ago, I crowded into a bar to hear a band sing La Calle Esté a Fuego, a song for dancing crows and me, fuego, fuego, fire, fire, streets aflame, danger, and beauty. We have lost a number of people to the virus, including my husband's son, my husband's brother on the Menominee Reservation in northern Wisconsin, and others. Lee Chapman, a fine publisher. This is dedicated to them, Ode to Lungs. Lungs rise, flatten, the rhythm easy all these years until now. Behind glass, alone, no ventilator, he gasps. I remember a 5-pound baby crying at first breath, filling tiny balloons inside a chest no larger than my fist. Now a grown man struggles to inhale, his fight against leaving life as dramatic as birth. He succeeds in catching a breath, pulling from the invisible air ocean enough to keep going another round, a final stretch as fates draw silk thread of his life up to light, flash scissors measure exactly where to cut. And levitation during COVID-19 begins with a short quote from Auden. In Bruegel's Icarus, for instance, how everything turns away quite leisurely from the disaster. My paired shoulder blades should be wings for flight among new angels, arriving after virus deaths. Like Icarus, I should soar over the bay until the dead appear as distant waves, my friends and Menominee brother-in-law. At that height, the sting of grief will fade. Rolling lines of surf will be strings of pearls, rippling and luminous in sunlight. Yet my flesh arms flail without feathers. They cannot lift me high enough to see the horizon where sorrow ends. Instead, from a hill, I see Icarus fall, splash, and the others. I am unable to calmly turn away from the disaster. Gravity pulls me into Earth's dark center. And I'd like to finish with one more here, a little more upbeat about our bear family. My husband's bear clan, his uncle and aunt and cousins all hunt bears. And we were visiting once, and I asked the story behind the name of Bear Trap Falls Road. Bear Trap Falls Road, where a cave behind waterfalls once flooded and trapped a bear, where a snow-packed road through prime bracken leads to aunt and uncle's house, where at night bears tear metal hoops off barrels and doors off sheds, where a bear lumbers from the forest past snarling dogs to the house where it scratches against a light pole and snags fur tufts 7 feet up, then it shits, where uncle got a bear last fall using a pistol, shooting into his toothy maw, the open mouth, the only soft part of the skull. Where after cleaning carcasses, uncle throws bear guts along the timberline. Where eagles gather to tear apart red entrails. Where a granddaughter shot her first bear and stewed the meat with mannamin wild rice. Where a cave in a branch of the Wolf River once flooded and drowned a bear. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Denise. That was fantastic. Our next reader is Ruth Nolan, who is a new friend, but I trust we will all get close, who grew up in California's Mojave Desert and married at a young age into a Standing Rock Sioux family. She works closely with the indigenous communities in the California deserts on educational, environmental, and cultural issues. A co-editor of Fire and Rain, Ecopoetry of California, and editor of No Place for a Puritan, The Literature of California's Deserts. She has been published widely in magazines and anthologies. Her poetry collection, Ruby Mountain, was released by Finishing Line Press. She is a curator of the ongoing humanities project, Fire on the Mojave, Stories from the deserts and mountains of inland Southern California. During the 1980s, she worked as a wildland firefighter for the Bureau of Land Management and the U.S. Forest Service. Currently, she is professor of English and creative writing at College of the Desert. Please welcome Ruth Nolan.
Thank you. I would just like to say I'm incredibly honored to be here. Thank you for including me and inviting me, and very proud to be representing the fantastic Fire and Rain Ecopoetry of California collection, which I co-edited with the incomparable Lucille Langday. I would first like to honor our state of California's indigenous people, they're our first residents, and particularly in the pandemic time, having lost several Native elders here in the desert, one of them a friend, and would especially like to honor our desert Indian, some of the tribes, the Cahuilla, Chemehuevi, Southern Paiute, Tibisha, Shoshone, Serrano, Vanium, and other tribes and Mojave of this region from the driest part of our state. Fire and Rain contained 147 poets, and 7 are indigenous poets from California. I feel that in having the honor to read all of the poems that are in this book and working with Lucille, that we were able to map and weave together an important sound song of voices, speaking to and from all of our state's diverse and really critical ecologies, which I'm assuming that we all love and call home. And we're all aware, we've all lived through the incredible hardships of our state enduring wildfires, and now we're getting rain and mudslides. We've been through a lot here in California, but we, like no other part of the country, enjoy a vibrancy and beauty and resilience that I think is represented in the poems of the book, and particularly in the voices and poems and songs of our Indigenous people, whose words have echoed off of every part of this state for centuries. Lucy had written in part of her introduction to Fire and Rain, which is very critical, I believe. We are now in the midst of a worldwide environmental crisis. For the past 50 years, global temperatures have been increasing faster than at any other time in human history. Dozens of species are going extinct every day. A poetry collection cannot solve these problems, but it can illuminate them and generate discussion. And I hope this anthology will do that. In addition, it is my hope that, to borrow an important phrase from one of my friends, salt song singer, Chumwevi, elder, and culture bearer, Matthew Lavis Jr., we are trying to bring back all of creation together again. This book of poems, I feel, does much to reestablish a continuity and fluidity of our ecologic poetic landscape that has always been here, but has very much been under-recognized, undervalued, and compartmentalized, and in academic circles kind of brushed aside. That's just, you're just having playtime. That's not serious. But I feel that poetry is the voice, especially eco poetries that ride closely with the natural world, is one of the most essential forces and beams of light that we have in today's environment, when we're facing so much with our pandemic, our environmental changes, loss of life, the many redwood trees that were just discovered downed. You may have heard about this in the news. These great giants bequeathing themselves to the cycle of life and death. These poems form a map, a story of necessity, urgency, beauty, transformation, grief and loss, and resilience that brings us all together, which is so important tonight. And it goes without saying that I want to thank Joyce Jenkins of Poetry Flash for leading us all together, bringing us together tonight here in our virtual world from all over the state. I'd like to start by reading a poem from one of our contributors, Sylvia Ross, who is of Chukchansi descent. Her poem is Cultural Capitulation. Below California's cold white sun and the swooping crows, scaggy branches reach for my old red truck. I like this truck's gaudy color. Maybe the trees do too. These gray trees long ago pushed past fence lines. Brooms of eucalyptus branches scrape the windows. Sickle leaves block my view along the easement road. I drive ahead and don't see the snake, but the truck's wheels bump twice over its length. In the mirror, the banded king lies in the ruts, now only fit for crows. My foot on the brake, too late. It's time to evict these blinding foreign trees. I can't worry whose property they're on. Oak belongs here, eucalyptus doesn't. I have saw and shears and axe. I could strip this alien arboretum down to the ground and take a native's revenge. My killing of the harmless snake, the tree's fault. But the intrepid crows, longer residents than my indigenous ancients, wheel in the air, squawk and scold over the truck. Crows live in these dubious trees, mate, nest, adapt better than I. It's time to go home, to the sofa, to a cup of Colombian coffee, to a consideration of snakes, Australian trees, and the essential dominance of crows. And that is by Sylvia Ross, one of our Fire and Rain contributors. I'm going to read one of my poems from the anthology, and this also features a native California bird species, black-chinned hummingbird, a small hummingbird of the Mojave Desert. I cut fresh sage at the mouth of Wild Rose Canyon, brought it home to dry on the old wood stove. I want to burn the damp string-racked bundles so I can remember you, so I can forget about you. The kitchen table is full of stems and memories, things you left behind and your knife has dulled. I've been hiking old Death Valley trails alone. The hills, the dunes, the intrusive, life-killing solar farms. I had to go so far to find this year's crop of sage. Drought, the sky, blinded by technology's hot stare. You once tried to mend the broken furniture, but wouldn't hug our daughter or braid her hair. Outside, the black-chinned hummingbird builds its tenaciously tiny nest in the blades of a palm tree, weaves together dried grass and other lost things, threads of your flannel shirt that I still love to wear. I wonder how long it will survive in the next hot windstorm, in a season long without rain, a summer full of mirrors and blades. If vultures will eat its tiny eggs, if its young will hatch strong and yearn to fly away like you. I'm going to read a short series of very short poems, and I'm going to move after that into my wildland firefighting poems. Women of the Desert Springs. Timbisha Shoshone tribal leader Paulina Steeves' Homeland Statement to Congress. From the Homeland Statement. We are people of the desert. We have been here since time began. This valley, which we call Tapapa, is our place of life, a place of renewal. Their name for this place, Death Valley, is unfortunate. For us, this is a place of life. We live as one with the valleys, mountains, flats, meadows, springs. All of the springs are interconnected below the ground through the desert. We have been keepers of these springs for centuries. We saw those lost people from the Manly Party in 1849. They refused to speak with our women. We could have helped them survive. All they had to do was ask us where the water was. Stinknet, Calflora, Oncocyphum pilifidarium. You with your big yellow head, never mind the ugly name, the flat white face you hide in the happy sunlight, flourishing on such graceful stems. Pretend you aren't causing harm to the indigenous flora and fauna, that you won't make the bighorn sheep sick, that you won't smell up the land with your exotic European fragrance, choke out so many native plants. They say this ecology is so categorized, defined, immutable, but that is apparently untrue. You're too pretty for your own good. Nobody wants you, but you're here to stay. You are invasive species. Of the Mojave, we danced an unspooled starvine, trumpeting white iridescent in blossom, step time with dune primrose, trilled along the fluted ridge of shifting sand dunes. In the short certainty of spring, I opened up pure as a mirage in the devil's playground. The desire for water, I wept a fat thunderstorm, anguishing itself into relief. Then nothing more, the hot wind, your love mouth on my skin, remembered like lightning. Firestorm, Southern California. It's the time of year that we have fire weather, when the air cracks with every bite, when the cool ocean breezes stop their tease, the heart of summer, this brute heat. Today, true to form, a fire breaks out. On a distant rise, I watch hot white clouds bubble into the sky, taste the black ash reminding me of my firefighting days. Hiking with the men on a rugged flank, sidestepping an angry rattlesnake or two, boots crunching another crispy critter, as we called them, and the weak attempt to gouge a fire line into the hillside to stop the raging flames. Many times I leaned into my fresh sharpened shovel, feeling helpless, knowing there wasn't much we could do. And I prayed for a shift in wind, a drop of rain. And I'll finish with my last poem, Mopping Up. One thing that very much intrigued me as a firefighter is that many of the terminologies of the field, the work, are domestic, things that are not really associated with a typically male workforce, but from a women's traditional, I'm not saying it's good, but traditionally associated with housework and housewives and all that. Mopping up. It's the most unraveled and well-paying job I've had, fighting fires in far-flung lonely wilderness areas, the San Bernardino National Forest, the Panamint Mountains, the Southern Sierra, Yosemite, Trinity Alps, the San Gabriel's looming like broken teeth above LA. Most of the time, I was the only female on the crew, cutting fire lines, sucking down smoke. And after a fire had laid down across ravaged meadows, our job was far from done. We hiked in baked potato hot, ankle-deep ash that blew in the wind like shed snakeskins to finish off dying wildfires by stirring and cooling the molten detritus. We sprayed dribbles of water from the fat bags that sloshed like heavy vertigo on our backs. We called them piss pumps. We struggled to keep pace in the slowed down underbelly of burned up things and cherished if little known Golden State geographies with lonely names. Rattlesnake Mountain, Horse Thief Spring, Last Chance Range, Toro Peak, Ave Kwame. Above all, the whispered remains of familiar forest trees lurking black and tall and jagged, stripped of the dignity of their given names. No more Jeffrey Pine, no more Ponderosa, no more Western Sequoia, no more California Black Oak. And at our feet, the complete bequeathing of the latter fuels. Manzanita, Western Juniper, Coyote Brush, Poison Oak. We could never really be sure if a wildfire was completely out. So we kept stirring ashes, watching each unearthed ember spark hot and red, and hopefully finally wish into its last puffy breath. This is what I remember most vividly from my firefighting days. The mopping up, and the mopping up, making sure the fire was put to bed, soothing the feverish brow of forsaken landscapes to cool them down. That, and how often the guys on my crew, including my future daughter's father, kept asking me why I'd left behind my apron to flirt with flames instead of with them. Thank you, that's it.
Thank you so much, Ruth.
Thank you.
Stephen Meadows is the mysteriously lit person over there. He's also the author of the first poem in my book, Deer Trails. Stephen Meadows is a Californian of pioneer and Ohlone descent. His poems have appeared in anthologies and journals nationwide, and one of them graces a bronze plaque in San Francisco. He's devoted much of his life to poetry in an attempt to honor his ancestors and the beauty of the natural world. He is a 20-plus year veteran of public radio, where he's interviewed scores of musicians and visionaries from the British Isles to North America. Stephen now resides with his family in the foothills of the Sierra Nevada. His poetry collection, Releasing the Days, was published by Heyday. Please welcome Stephen Meadows.
Okay, I think I'm here. Can you hear me? All right, thank you so much. I thank you all. It's wonderful to be here. It's really a pleasure to have been selected for Fire and Rain. And I'm going to read first one poem from Kurt Schweigman from that book, and then I'll read a couple of my own. The poem is Marin Coast for Lucy. We hiked to the ocean today, left a prayer for earth where land and sea hug each other. It was better than good, maybe even gooder than better. We reminisced her toddler memories. Sun melted my worries away, plants, rocks, trees, sky, kept us both in the moment, beaming smiles as prayer and earth do feel the simplest love of a father and young daughter who hold hands while hiking. Kurt is Lakota, and his work has been awarded prizes all over the country. His latest poem, Prined for Life, is an ode to the late folk singer John Prine. And now I will move on to a couple of poems that I have written, once again in Fire and Rain, Ecopoetry of California. Waterhole. A reedy place full of grasses and tules, fronded, toad-colored by the bay's curved edge. Ancestors, accustomed to moist, pliant ground, came down the long swale for their water a day at a time, stepping soft in the wet mud, knowing they would slip just a little. And this will be my last offering. It is called Drought. Hot breath on lupin, on sizzling sierra, parched grass, the seed pods tick soft in slow wind. On the skittle this summer, madrones are bright yellow, ponderosa, brown needles, low water sucks the stone. Thank you all very much. It is such a pleasure being with you.
Thank you so much, Stephen. You're going to want to remute yourself there. It's always a pleasure to get to hear Stephen. As you can see from the location, it's not always an easy thing to do. Our last reader is Dave Holt, who I have known for quite some time now. Born in Toronto of Irish, English, and Ojibwe ancestry, moved to California as an aspiring songwriter, also a musician and composer. He and his wife, Chappelle, collaborate on composing, recording, and mixed poetry song performances. His poetry has won several prizes, including a Literary Cultural Arts Award for his book, Voyages to Ancestral Lands, which tells the story of reuniting with his Anishinaabe Ojibwe ancestors. His work is included in several anthologies, such as Red Indian Road West, Native American Poetry from California, and Descanso's Words from the Wayside, where his poem received a Pushcart Prize nomination. Welcome, Dave Holt.
Thank you. Can you hear me now? Okay. Welcome, everyone. So good to see so many friends here. Thank you. Two from Fire and Rain, Ecopoetry of California. Waiting on spring. A quiet afternoon between storms. In the ebb of time, we discussed the pruning of walnut trees. Do you remember where you saw it? He asked. So I led the park botanist down the hill to Mitchell Canyon, through a grove of Northern California natives, black bark contrast to gray limbs grafted onto rough-ridged trunks of native walnut by a farmer whose land became state park. We searched for the English walnut I found, distinguished by uniform gray trunk. Juglans regia means a nut in the king's palace, or something like that, he said. It's really a Persian species, not English. Panic at the quail crossing, fleeing brood of chicks, clucking pit pit, whir of wings, we violated their path, but found my tree. Volunteer workday on the mountain. My car is the first to arrive in the parking lot. Rest of the volunteers will be here soon. Jeff and I don't feel like waiting. We haul our chainsaws and tools up a switchback trail to Twin Peaks. No one's walked the mountain yet. We break the spider's silk barriers strung across the path at night, brushing webs from our eyelids. Finches from a safe perch in scrub oak and coyote bush call to their neighbors. First humans of the day coming through. Sunlight sneaks over the range of hills, Diablo, Olympia, North Peak, arrayed on the opposite side from us on Eagle Peak Trail. We scramble up the rocky horns in time to see sunrise arrive. Stir wind into motion, signal the start of a race above land from the east, as if a sun chariot really were starting its run across heaven. Hail, Phoebus Apollo. Calling Cleu from a nearby coulter pine, lone flicker we couldn't see till it darted out, catches a ride on the new risen breeze. Swoop, dip, flies like it's rowing, sculling the air. Gentle breeze becomes strong cold wind that blows across the top of the world, mighty weather engines of the planet, doing their work as we hurl along in Earth's orbit. Rain predicted this evening. We have to finish clearing the trail today. I pull the cord on the saw. Its violent roar shatters the morning's serenity. Thank you. I'm going to read one of E.K. Cooper's contributions to Fire and Rain. Eric, as we knew him, Eric Cooper, died a warrior's death, April 9th, 2020. Still on the job at California Indian Manpower Consortium, in the saddle, so to speak, where he'd worked for 32 years. Here is his memoir of Pinoleville Pomo Nation and the tribute to his beloved father. Where have they gone? Echoed memories of they are like a family. You must leave the generations whole and take only a few and move down the cliff. Wisdom passed from my dad to me when I was a child. The ocean cliffs of Fort Bragg, California, blanketed with mussels, the oldest ones, each the size of a brick, nestled among the younger generations, providing shelter and comfort. Once gathered, they were dumped in a large steaming pot, covered until the mussels opened. Each was eaten whole, straight from the shell, an orange, delicious meal. Ocean rocks covered in dark and light green seaweed. Each plant was 4 to 6 feet long, swaying with each breaking wave. I would grab a handful from the rock and pull before the next wave came in. Seaweed would wrap itself around my arm, while others escaped my grasp. It left slimy, smelled salty. It felt slimy, smelled salty, but when dried, fried, and wrapped in a warm tortilla, it was delicious. These same rocks held hidden treasures as well, a blind hand reaching and feeling for a rock that is not. A piece of flat metal was used to pry under and worked back and forth. Then off would pop an abalone the size of a dinner plate. It would be pounded, cut into strips, floured, and fried. A food so rich in flavor only a small portion was needed to satisfy your craving. Pinoleville, my dad's reservation, has a creek that holds the best of all of them, the Salmon Run. The river water would be bank to bank as the salmon swam upstream to their spawning grounds. Native men would wait with spears and hooks, then wade into the creek to catch salmon for their families, always with the knowledge to take a small amount and leave enough for future salmon runs. Baked, smoked, or fried, the flavor always reminded you that river water held a flavor all its own. The Fort Bragg ocean cliffs and rocks still remain, but are now barren. The Pinoleville Reservation Creek is now a trickle on a good day, but most often dry. I learned in my youth traditional ways of being one with the plants, animals, and Mother Earth. I yearned to pass down my knowledge the way I was taught, by showing. My youth of plenty now sits with its spirit heavy with sorrow as my adulthood wrestles with a future of none. This pomo asks one question: where have they gone? Thank you. Thank you, Eric and Mr. E.K. Cooper. I'll read one from Red Indian Road West. This is about the Pomo tribe, interestingly enough. Eric was not the first Pomo I met. I'd lived in Sonoma County, so I met several of the Kashaya Pomo. This is part of their story. Murder in the modern West. Pomo gambler hits the card rooms, meth labs, and bar brawls. Feed the heartbreak playing on the jukebox. Songs should be sung about God's country, stolen, the inhabitants exiled, instead of divorcees in go-go boots, cowboy ramblers, one-night stands. The fight for Indian land rights doomed. A dam got built. It drowned a sacred place where willow plants and sedgeroot grew, the harvest used for feather baskets. Kahuani, ancient village, prevailed 13 millennia, flooded forever. Families once gathered, laughed, gossiped at hot springs become Lake Sonoma. A reservoir for water sports, motorboats, jet skis, a marina, and a culture museum to house dead things that remain. The land where I live, sort of Clayton and Concord border near Mount Diablo, once belonged to the Chupkan Miwok, the northern mountain tribe of Miwok. The Ohlone were eastern, southern. Of course, they all knew each other and visited. This is a story of modern Miwok man. Jackrabbit sprints up the hill, following a track in the grass. He who found Rabbit's trail, modern Miwok man, thought it was a deer path. Hunts with a rifle now, follows a jog in his memory, guided by Rabbit. Stories lodged in the collective unconscious of a village on Cerro Alto de los Bobones, high hill of the Volvon tribe. His Chupkan ancestors would visit before the days marked by European time, 1775, when Captain Juan de Ayala sailed in through Boca del Puerto de San Francisco, which Fremont later called the Golden Gate, Chrysopoli. Even before there was gold and a quest for holy dust that drove men mad, unaware that a city of harvest gatherers and hunters dwelt in the hills as they'd lived for millennia, preparing food from over 700 bedrock mortars, grinding the oak acorn harvest, they too unaware that new names were given to the sacred places of their land in a language imported from Spain, improper words assigned by immigrant people who didn't know directions or even comprehend where they stood. In the remote mountain fastness, over 60 homes of the Volvon Bay Miwok families, tilled meadows, planted bulbs of brodia and lily, tended groves of walnut, pruned riverbank willow, made journeys in the summer to the bay shore for sea salt, shellfish, relief from inland heat, sent their strongest warriors north across the dangerous Karkin Strait in Tule Reed Sakas canoes, then took footpath to the Clear Lake tribes to trade and barter and seek permission to mine obsidian for blades, axes, arrowheads. We followed the rhythm of time as we knew it, says modern Miwok man. But time is a thief. The Volvan Bay Miwok city long deserted. Spanish Franciscan friars and their soldados took us away. We escaped. Troops followed us back, cursed our religion, reviled our medicine men, renamed sacred mountain Ajampile after Que Cabron, El Diablo, abducted us to missions where we learned new ways to survive, to play new kinds of music, notes scratched on a page, new rituals from a book they said was holy. We raised cattle for the Spaniard and the gringo. The smallpox took most of us. Modern Miwok man now follows the call of his work, a steward of the environment, a biologist using knowledge of his tribe's traditions, ecology to restore streams, native plants, and scientific methods to reverse the pollutions of Earth Mother. History says we lived under 6 flags in this state of California, an amusement park joke, many more than that, but no flag was raised to honor our Bay Miwok Volvan people, once a nation, still here to protect the land. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. I was sitting here thinking about what an honor it is always to read at Watershed, and what a particular honor it is to read at Watershed in my house here in Ramaytush territory in Yelamu. It's all very different. I have one last thing to share. This is called urban ecology. Not all fauna is charismatic. The shirtless man on BART holds his jail pants up with one hand, and in this weather, so I gave him my extra shirt. Same trip, the woman panicking who said, "Fear." She said, "Fear is contagious." To a BART carriage full of people. And now you all have it too. Finally in Oakland, 19th Street above ground, raining, wailing water. 2 trees full of crows. I stare. A man monologues paranoia. He catches my eye. You think I'm crazy. I laugh at him. I'm standing here in the rain looking at crows. Who do you think you're talking to? Thank you so much for sharing tonight with all of us. Being here, we need audience as much as we need readers. Thank you to each of the readers, Denise, Ruth, Stephen, Dave. Thank you to Lucy. Thank you especially to Joyce of Poetry Flash, who is remarkable and wonderful and does so much for poetry in the Bay Area. Thank you all.
I just want to say a few words just to let you know that we have a full weekend of Watershed events. This is the kickoff event for the first virtual Watershed. And we have an event tomorrow, noon to 2, the Strawberry Creek Walk, that's going to be partially live streamed, which is completely insane. So and partially Zoomed. So Lucille Langday will be reading at that event, and she'll also be reading during the event on Sunday afternoon at 3 p.m. And a big shout out to Lucy Day for all of her help with this event and with everything globally. So just thank you all for joining us. Really, really appreciate your being here, and just love you and thank you. See
I
you.
totally just forgot to thank Molly Fisk.
And Molly Fisk, right. I was thinking of Lucy because she helped, you know, is reading and all that, but Molly's in the audience. Molly Fisk, editor of the California Fire and Rain, is in the house. And thank you, Molly Fisk, for all of your work on that beautiful anthology. And please check the chat box for the Zoom links, not the Zoom links, I apologize, long day. It's the URLs, the links to the first virtual Watershed bookshop, and also to the poetryflash.org Watershed page that has all of the Zoom links, all of the information about the entire program. Thanks. Good night.
Good night.
Good night. I very much enjoyed tonight. Thank you.
Thank
Bravo,
you.
everyone.